The early years of World War II brought urgent questions for the United States Army Air Corps: how to balance range, speed, firepower, and versatility in a platform that could adapt across theaters and missions. In the interwar period, the U.S. Army had focused heavily on heavy bombers like the B-17 Flying Fortress and light attack aircraft such as the A-20 Havoc. Yet there remained a pressing gap for a true medium bomber, an aircraft capable of carrying meaningful payloads over tactical distances while operating from austere airstrips and adaptable to multiple mission profiles. This operational requirement would give birth to one of the most successful and widely used bombers of the Second World War, the North American B-25 Mitchell. The strategic context of the late 1930s shaped the Air Corps' priorities. Global tensions were escalating. In Europe, Germany's Luftwaffe was rapidly expanding and modernizing, while Japan's campaigns in China demonstrated the utility of flexible aerial platforms in prolonged ground conflicts. In response, the U.S. War Department issued a series of technical requirements for a twin-engine bomber that could bridge the capability gap between light and heavy aircraft. It needed to be fast enough to evade enemy fighters, rugged enough for forward operations, and large enough to carry up to 3,000 pounds of bombs. The mission profile would vary: tactical bombing, anti-shipping strikes, reconnaissance, and even torpedo delivery. In 1938, North American Aviation began preliminary work on such a design under the leadership of chief designer J.H. Dutch Kindleberger. Drawing on their experience with the twin-engine XB-21 project, ultimately unsuccessful but informative, engineers envisioned a new medium bomber with twin Wright R2600 radial engines, a high-mounted wing, and tricycle landing gear to improve pilot visibility and ground handling. The concept evolved quickly as operational requirements tightened, and by early 1939, North American submitted the NA-62 proposal to the U.S. Army Air Corps. What set the NA-62 apart wasn't groundbreaking innovation, but rather a balance of practicality and modularity. The design emphasized a relatively short fuselage, minimizing weight and maximizing structural integrity. The bomb bay was placed in the center of gravity, allowing for stable flight regardless of load configuration. The aircraft's structure was robust. Steel-reinforced longerons and aluminum skin allowed it to absorb damage in combat, while simplified systems facilitated field maintenance. The cockpit and nose compartment were designed for excellent visibility, vital for low-level attack runs. In September 1939, just as war erupted in Europe, the U.S. Army Air Corps ordered the first production version under the designation B-25. Though still in prototype form, the aircraft promised to meet several mission requirements with a margin of operational flexibility not found in other medium bomber designs of the time. Its developers did not set out to create a record-breaking machine. They aimed to produce something dependable, scalable, and adaptable to changing tactical needs. The B-25's naming was symbolic. It honored General Billy Mitchell, a pioneer of American air power and vocal proponent of strategic bombing. Though Mitchell had died more than a decade earlier, his advocacy for a strong, independent air arm left an enduring legacy. Naming a Workhorse medium bomber after him reflected a shift in Air Corps thinking, from limited support roles toward sustained autonomous air campaigns across large operational zones. Early design challenges did arise. Engineers grappled with weight distribution issues, vibration from the large radial engines, and questions of defensive armament layout. Should the aircraft feature a glazed nose for bombing runs or a solid nose packed with forward-firing guns? Should defensive coverage emphasize top and rear arcs or prioritize lateral and ventral angles? These decisions would lead to a proliferation of variants later in the war, but the core airframe remained remarkably unchanged, a testament to the solid fundamentals of its initial engineering. Even before it entered service, the B-25 attracted attention from foreign observers. The Royal Air Force and Royal Canadian Air Force monitored its development closely, noting its potential for roles beyond bombing: maritime patrol, convoy escort, and even night attack. This early interest foreshadowed the B-25's eventual spread across Allied air forces worldwide. By the time the United States formally entered the war in December 1941, the B-25 had already completed its initial development cycle and stood ready for widespread deployment. Its debut would not be marked by quiet integration into routine squadrons, but by one of the most audacious bombing missions in American history. Even before that moment, however, the aircraft had already proven itself as a symbol of American industrial capability and adaptive design. An average bomber on paper, but one destined to serve in every theater of the global conflict. The first B-25 prototype made its maiden flight on August 19, 1940, from Mines Field in California. Initial results confirmed much of what North American aviation engineers had expected: a stable, predictable platform with strong takeoff performance and responsive controls. However, the flight test program also revealed areas in need of refinement. Lateral stability at high speeds was a concern, as was tail buffeting during abrupt maneuvers. To correct this, the original prototype's vertical stabilizer, initially a single large fin, was replaced with twin vertical fins and rudders on subsequent test aircraft. This now iconic twin-tail arrangement improved directional stability and became a defining feature of the production B-25. Early test pilots noted that the aircraft handled well for its size and weight class, though its nose-heavy tendencies required caution during takeoff and landing. The aircraft's high-mounted wings gave it excellent ground clearance, a feature that later proved vital in rough field operations across Pacific Islands and remote Asian airstrips. The tricycle landing gear, unusual at the time for bombers, made taxiing and takeoff much easier compared to tail dragger designs and improved forward visibility on the ground, an important consideration for the often young and relatively inexperienced pilots entering service. The Wright R2600 engines used in the B-25 delivered over 1,700 horsepower each, but engineers were cautious about pushing them too hard in the prototype stage. Engine cooling, carburetor icing, and torque asymmetry were carefully monitored, and the nacelle design was adjusted to ensure more efficient airflow and accessibility for maintenance. These modifications were implemented quickly due to North American aviation's highly streamlined production and engineering feedback loop, which allowed real-world testing data to inform assembly line improvements in near real time. As the test program expanded, multiple pre-production aircraft, designated YB-25, were assigned to evaluation units within the U.S. Army Air Corps. These aircraft underwent both standard performance testing and simulated combat scenarios. Bombing accuracy trials, gunner visibility tests, and stress tolerance assessments were all conducted rigorously, particularly as wartime urgency accelerated the timetable for deployment. Tests with both internal bomb loads and external stores helped define operational load limits and refine the aircraft's center of gravity parameters. The flexibility of the B-25 design became apparent during this phase. With its modular fuselage and internal layout, the aircraft could be configured for high-altitude level bombing or low-altitude skip bombing, depending on mission requirements. The bomb bay doors opened quickly and cleanly, while the glazed nose offered precision targeting capability in daylight operations. These qualities attracted interest from several commands within the Army Air Forces, who saw potential for the aircraft not only in Europe, but also in more fluid, mobile theaters like the Southwest Pacific and North Africa. Despite the aircraft's promise, early feedback from test gunners raised concerns about the defensive armament layout. The initial configuration offered limited coverage to the ventral hemisphere, creating a vulnerability during rearward attacks from below. Engineers responded by introducing a remote-controlled belly turret, though this design proved complex and was later replaced with a manned position in most operational models. The dorsal turret, positioned just behind the cockpit, was more successful, offering a wide field of fire and becoming a standard feature in most variants. Side-mounted .50 caliber machine guns in waist positions were also tested and later standardized. By early 1941, production began in earnest at North American's plant in Inglewood, California. The company adopted innovative mass production techniques to streamline output, including prefabricated component assemblies and parallel manufacturing lines. This allowed North American to meet rapidly increasing demands from both domestic and allied customers. The first production B-25s were delivered to the 17th Bombardment Group at McCord Field in Washington, where they underwent operational readiness trials. Feedback from these early operational units was critical in refining flight procedures, emergency protocols, and loadout configurations. The pace of development and production was unusually fast. Within a year of its first flight, the B-25 was not only in active service, but being produced in multiple variants. Each iteration incorporated minor design changes based on combat theater requirements, pilot feedback, and technical assessments from test squadrons. This agile development cycle was made possible by North American aviation's engineering infrastructure and close collaboration with the Army Air Forces. The successful testing and production launch of the B-25 established it as a versatile, rugged, and scalable platform. It did not set records for speed or bomb load, but its ease of handling, structural resilience, and adaptability made it ideal for mass deployment. Its twin-engine design provided redundancy over long distances, and its wide operational envelope gave commanders options, an increasingly rare commodity in an expanding, unpredictable global war. By the time the United States formally entered World War II in December 1941, hundreds of B-25s had been produced, and more were on the way. It was a bomber designed not for perfection, but for reliability and adaptability, qualities that would soon be tested in one of the most daring and symbolic missions of the early war years. The B-25 Mitchell entered combat service at a time of extreme pressure and urgency for the United States Army Air Forces. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the U.S. military scrambled to project strength across a suddenly hostile Pacific with available aircraft thrust into action regardless of peacetime development timelines. The B-25, newly delivered to frontline squadrons, was rapidly deployed in both combat and training roles. Its operational debut came not in minor skirmishes, but in a bold demonstration of reach and retaliation that would etch the aircraft into the annals of military history: the Doolittle Raid. On April 18, 1942, 16 B-25B Mitchell bombers launched from the USS Hornet in a surprise raid on Tokyo and other Japanese cities. The mission, conceived by Navy Captain Francis Lowe and led by Lieutenant Colonel James H. Doolittle, was designed as a psychological counterblow, demonstrating that Japan was vulnerable to American air power. The selection of the B-25 for this task was no accident. It was the only available medium bomber that met all mission criteria: enough range to reach Japan from a carrier launch point, sufficient bomb load to damage strategic targets, and a compact frame capable of launching from a carrier deck under extreme conditions. The raid marked the first time medium bombers had ever been launched from an aircraft carrier. Modifications to the B-25Bs used in the mission included removal of defensive armament to save weight, installation of additional fuel tanks, and adjustment of bomb sights for low-altitude release. Although the material damage inflicted by the raid was limited, the strategic and psychological impact was enormous. The operation forced Japan to redirect resources toward homeland defense and accelerated their decision to launch the ill-fated Midway operation. For the B-25, the raid demonstrated capabilities far beyond original expectations, earning the aircraft global recognition. Following the Doolittle Raid, the B-25 entered widespread operational use in multiple theaters. In the Pacific, it served with the 5th Air Force in New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. There, the aircraft was quickly adapted for low-level attack missions, striking Japanese shipping, airfields, and ground installations. Tropical conditions proved punishing to all Allied equipment, but the B-25's rugged design endured the heat, humidity, and rough jungle airstrips. Maintenance crews valued its accessible engine nacelles and simplified systems, while pilots appreciated its forgiving handling during demanding sorties. Tactical doctrine evolved rapidly. The B-25 began performing skip bombing runs, flying at treetop level to drop bombs that would skip into ships' hulls before detonation. This dangerous tactic required nerves of steel and precise flying, but it allowed the B-25 to inflict devastating losses on Japanese convoys, particularly in the Bismarck Sea and along the northern coast of New Guinea. To support this role, many B-25s were retrofitted with solid noses filled with multiple .50 caliber machine guns, transforming them into deadly gunships capable of saturating enemy positions during approach. In North Africa, the B-25 proved equally adaptable. Serving with the 12th Air Force during the 1942-1943 campaigns in Tunisia and later in Sicily and Italy, the aircraft carried out medium-altitude bombing against Axis supply lines, troop concentrations, and airfields. These missions highlighted the aircraft's ability to deliver consistent payloads while sustaining moderate levels of enemy resistance. Though vulnerable to flak and fighter interception, B-25 crews relied on tight formations, synchronized defensive firepower, and top cover to complete their assignments. Lessons learned in North Africa directly influenced tactics later employed in the Italian mainland and southern France. In the China-Burma-India theater, the B-25 operated in some of the most logistically challenging conditions of the war. Airfields carved from jungle terrain and primitive maintenance facilities tested the aircraft's resilience. Still, it proved indispensable. The B-25 supported Chinese ground forces, attacked Japanese rail lines and supply depots, and conducted harassment raids across the Burma Road. The twin-engine reliability and decent range made it one of the few aircraft capable of operating effectively in the region's mountainous terrain. Pilots and commanders across theaters provided largely positive feedback. While acknowledging its limited bomb load compared to heavier aircraft like the B-17, they praised the B-25's versatility, especially its ability to carry out both precision strikes and low-altitude attacks. Defensive armament coverage was considered adequate for most missions, though crews often modified their aircraft in the field, adding guns, armor, or extra fuel tanks depending on the mission. The cockpit layout, with side-by-side seating and good visibility, was considered superior to many contemporaries in terms of pilot situational awareness. The aircraft's adaptability also extended to joint operations. B-25s often coordinated with fighters for escort, with heavy bombers for strategic raids, or with reconnaissance aircraft for pre-mission planning. It became a true workhorse, neither glamorous nor revolutionary, but dependable, flexible, and available in large numbers when urgently needed. Its operational performance built confidence among Allied commanders, contributing to its continued deployment even after newer models became available. By the end of 1943, the B-25 had become a fixture in Allied air operations, deployed in every major combat theater and continuously adapted for new mission profiles. Whether striking naval convoys in the Pacific, hammering Axis targets in Europe, or supporting guerrilla efforts in Asia, the B-25 fulfilled its promise as the average bomber that succeeded through consistency and evolution. Its early operational role laid the foundation for more specialized variants and increasingly complex missions in the years to follow. As the war progressed into 1944 and beyond, the B-25 Mitchell evolved far beyond its original purpose as a medium-level strategic bomber. Its combat use reflected a remarkable ability to adapt to shifting operational demands, particularly in the Pacific theater where conventional tactics often proved inadequate. Rather than focusing on high-altitude precision bombing, an approach more suitable for heavy bombers, the B-25 found its niche in low-level, high-speed attack missions. It became a versatile multi-role platform equally suited for interdiction, anti-shipping strikes, and close air support. Its rugged construction and modular design allowed continuous field modification, turning the aircraft into one of the most adaptable tools of the Allied air arsenal. The Southwest Pacific saw some of the most innovative and aggressive use of the B-25. Under the leadership of General George C. Kenney and the 5th Air Force, tactical doctrine shifted sharply toward low-level operations. The aim was to strike Japanese supply lines, airfields, and shipping with speed and surprise, reducing the effectiveness of enemy defenses. B-25 squadrons were re-equipped with solid noses packed with as many as 8 forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns. Additional guns were often installed in cheek mounts and waist positions, turning the aircraft into flying gun platforms capable of delivering intense firepower before even releasing a bomb. In this configuration, the B-25 became the spearhead of the Allies' anti-shipping campaign in the South Pacific. It participated in bold attacks against Japanese convoys using skip bombing tactics developed and refined in combat. Pilots flew at altitudes of 50 to 100 feet, skimming just above the ocean surface, to drop bombs that would ricochet off the water and strike enemy vessels near the waterline. This required extraordinary piloting skill and exposed the aircraft to intense anti-aircraft fire, but the results were devastating. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea in March 1943 exemplified this approach. B-25s, flying in coordinated waves with fighters and other bombers, obliterated a Japanese troop convoy, sinking 8 ships and severely damaging the rest. Beyond shipping strikes, the B-25 proved invaluable in suppressing enemy airfields and coastal defenses. Operating from primitive runways on captured islands or newly constructed forward bases, Mitchell bombers hit Japanese installations with a combination of bombs, rockets, and strafing runs. Its ability to fly repeated sorties, absorb damage, and continue operations under harsh conditions made it a cornerstone of the island-hopping campaign. Ground troops came to depend on B-25 units for close air support during amphibious landings, and for neutralizing entrenched enemy positions beyond artillery range. In Europe, the B-25's use was somewhat more conventional but still essential. Employed by the Mediterranean Allied Air Forces, B-25s conducted medium-altitude bombing missions against road junctions, rail yards, and tactical targets across Italy and southern France. Here, formations of 12 to 18 aircraft operated with fighter escort, dropping 500-pound bombs with moderate precision. While not immune to flak or fighter attack, the B-25's performance in these missions was consistent. Crews appreciated the aircraft's ruggedness. Many aircraft returned to base with significant damage but managed to keep their crews alive. Notably, the aircraft's combat adaptability was enhanced by theater-specific field modifications. Some squadrons replaced the standard bomb load with parafrag clusters, small parachute-retarded bombs ideal for spreading destruction over airstrips and dispersed infantry positions. Others fitted rocket rails under the wings, enabling the B-25 to deliver high-velocity aerial rockets against tanks and fortifications. These modifications reflected not only the aircraft's flexibility, but also the decentralized nature of its evolution. Changes were often implemented in theater by maintenance crews responding to immediate tactical needs. The B-25 also played a vital role in psychological warfare. Loud, low-flying Mitchells performing treetop-level attack runs had a profound effect on enemy morale. The sudden arrival of fast-moving bombers delivering heavy machine gun fire, rockets, and fragmentation bombs often caused panic and disorganization among Japanese ground troops, especially in jungle terrain where visibility was already limited. Commanders frequently coordinated these raids with infantry advances, turning the B-25 into a force multiplier on the battlefield. In the China-Burma-India theater, the B-25's ability to operate from rough airstrips and its reliable twin-engine configuration made it one of the few medium bombers suitable for long-range interdiction missions. It attacked Japanese rail infrastructure, river traffic, and supply routes supporting operations in central China and northern Burma. Though maintenance was a constant challenge due to limited resources, the aircraft's operational readiness remained high compared to other platforms. It became an essential tool for Allied forces operating in terrain too rugged or remote for heavy bomber support. As the war neared its end, the B-25 continued to see frontline use despite the growing availability of more advanced aircraft. In many ways, its persistence reflected the maturity of the platform. It was not fast by 1945 standards, nor did it carry the bomb loads of newer designs, but it had become the backbone of medium-range attack operations in multiple theaters. Its presence was so widespread that by the end of the war, more than 10,000 B-25s had been produced across multiple factories and variants. The B-25's combat role evolved in direct response to battlefield conditions, from high-altitude bombing to low-level strikes, from precision raids to saturation attacks. It adapted to each new demand with structural resilience and tactical effectiveness. In doing so, it earned a reputation not for brilliance but for dependability. It was the aircraft that could be pushed further, flown longer, and modified more extensively than most of its contemporaries. Qualities that defined its legacy as the unassuming average that won the confidence of aircrews and commanders alike. The B-25 Mitchell's evolutionary path through World War II produced a broad family of variants that reflected the aircraft's intrinsic adaptability. Far from remaining a fixed design, the B-25 underwent continual modification based on theater requirements, technological improvements, and field innovations. These variants were not superficial upgrades, but represented significant changes in armament, mission capability, and even airframe structure. The diversity of the B-25 family speaks to the airframe's fundamental engineering strength, its ability to accommodate changing roles without compromising flight integrity or reliability. The earliest production variant, the B-25A, introduced relatively minor changes over the prototype configuration, including armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks. This was followed by the B-25B, the version used in the Doolittle Raid. The B model incorporated a distinctive configuration, a shorter greenhouse canopy, a remotely operated belly turret, and a limited defensive armament suite. While innovative, the remote turret proved complex and was quickly dropped in favor of simpler, manually operated stations in later models. The B-25C and its nearly identical twin, the B-25D, marked a significant step forward. These models were produced in large numbers and represented the standard medium bomber configuration used across most theaters by 1942-1943. The C and D variants featured improved power plants, revised tail gunnery positions, and standardized dorsal turrets. Their internal layout included bomb racks for up to 3,000 pounds of ordnance, and their range extended beyond 300 miles. These variants also laid the groundwork for extensive field customization. Many of the most famous gunship conversions were based on the B-25C and D airframes. As frontline units developed new combat techniques, especially in the Pacific, demand grew for a version optimized for low-level attacks. This led to the development of the B-25G, which introduced a radical change in armament. A solid nose fitted with a 75mm M4 cannon, the largest caliber weapon ever mounted in an American combat aircraft during the war. The idea was to provide a precision standoff weapon for attacking Japanese shipping and fortified ground targets. The cannon, manually loaded, could fire one round every few seconds and was supplemented by forward-firing 50 caliber machine guns. While powerful, the 75mm gun's limited rate of fire and recoil challenges meant it was eventually supplanted by even more heavily armed versions focused on machine gun saturation. The B-25H took the gunship concept further. It retained the 75mm cannon but added up to 14 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, waist, and forward cheek mounts. It also included improved armor, enhanced bomb racks for external ordnance, and a simplified tail gunner's station. The B-25H was particularly effective in the Pacific theater, where its sheer firepower overwhelmed small shipping vessels, ground fortifications, and jungle concentrations. These aircraft did not need fighter escort on many missions. Their combined forward-firing guns were sufficient to drive off enemy aircraft or suppress anti-aircraft emplacements before bomb release. The B-25J, the final and most numerous production version, combined the best features of earlier models and became the definitive Mitchell. Over 4,300 B-25Js were built, many of which came in two configurations, one with a glazed nose for bombing missions and one with a solid nose packed with up to 8 forward-firing with 50 caliber machine guns for ground attack roles. The J model also standardized dorsal and tail turrets, improved engine cowling design for better cooling, and featured strengthened landing gear. It could carry up to 3,600 pounds of bombs internally and externally and was widely used for low-level strafing, medium-altitude bombing, and close air support. Specialized versions also emerged. The F-10 was a photo reconnaissance variant stripped of armament and outfitted with vertical and oblique cameras for intelligence gathering. A handful of B-25s were converted into trainers, transport aircraft, or VIP transports, some even for use by Allied heads of state and commanders. The British Royal Air Force received B-25s under Lend-Lease agreements and employed them under the designation Mitchell Mark II and Mark III, using them in North Africa, Italy, and Western Europe primarily for tactical bombing. The Soviet Union also received B-25s, employing them in long-range bombing squadrons on the Eastern Front. Canada, Australia, the Netherlands, East Indies, China, and Brazil were among the other nations that operated B-25s either during the war or in the immediate post-war period. These aircraft were often modified for regional needs, ranging from anti-submarine warfare to extended-range maritime patrols. Post-war, several B-25s were converted for civilian roles such as aerial mapping, cargo transport, and firefighting, their robust frames and generous fuel capacity making them suitable for demanding peacetime missions. Technologically, the B-25 was a transitional aircraft. It bridged the gap between the light bombers of the interwar era and the highly specialized strike aircraft that followed. Its systems were relatively simple compared to late war standards, but its adaptability prefigured many design philosophies that would dominate Cold War aviation: modularity, multi-mission capability, and rugged field serviceability. The Mitchell's evolutionary track across its variants provided continuous feedback to North American aviation and the U.S. Army Air Forces, shaping not only bomber design but broader operational doctrine for mid-range tactical aircraft. In total, over 9,800 B-25s were produced across 9 major variants and numerous field-modified subtypes. Few World War II aircraft matched this level of functional diversity. Whether flying with a single pilot over Burma, unleashing rockets over the Philippines, or dropping photo flash bombs over occupied France, the B-25 Mitchell adapted itself to almost every challenge. Its evolution was not one of radical reinvention, but of cumulative, battlefield-proven adaptation, a quality that made it not only durable in hardware, but indispensable in strategy. As the guns of World War II fell silent in 1945, the B-25 Mitchell began its transition from frontline combat aircraft to enduring symbol of adaptability and wartime innovation. Its global footprint, shaped over years of service across every major theater, ensured that the Mitchell would not be quietly retired, but instead find extended life in various peacetime and secondary roles. Its legacy was not defined by technological superiority or strategic shock and awe, but by practical utility, widespread deployment, and remarkable post-war longevity, qualities that allowed an average bomber to conquer not just the world's battlefields, but its peacetime skies as well. In the immediate aftermath of the war, many air forces retained their B-25 fleets due to the aircraft's reliability and proven versatility. The U.S. Army Air Forces, soon to become the U.S. Air Force in 1947, continued to operate B-25s in non-combat roles well into the 1950s. These included navigation trainers, often designated TB-25, multi-engine pilot trainers, and radar calibration platforms. Modified Mitchells also served as target tugs and electronic warfare testbeds as Cold War aviation doctrine began to shift toward jet propulsion and long-range deterrence. In the civilian sector, hundreds of surplus B-25s were sold off through post-war disposal programs. Many were purchased by private operators, mapping companies, and agricultural service providers who recognized the aircraft's potential beyond military use. Its large bomb bay was easily converted into camera mounts or chemical tanks, and its twin-engine configuration offered safety margins for overland and long-range flights. A significant number of former combat aircraft became aerial survey planes, firefighting tankers, or executive transports, a fate that few other medium bombers of the war shared on such a wide scale. Internationally, the B-25 continued to fly for years. The Brazilian Air Force, which had received Mitchells under Lend-Lease, maintained them into the 1950s as part of its modernization efforts. The Netherlands deployed B-25s in colonial conflicts in the Dutch East Indies, using them for bombing and reconnaissance missions during the post-war uprisings. Indonesia, having seized aircraft during the conflict, flew captured B-25s during its own war of independence. China's Nationalist Air Force operated Mitchells during the Chinese Civil War, and later relocated surviving aircraft to Taiwan, where they remained in use into the 1950s. The aircraft also saw brief but notable service during the early years of the Cold War. Some B-25s were converted for maritime patrol and anti-submarine roles, as tensions increased in the Atlantic and Pacific. Others served in weather reconnaissance missions, flying into tropical storm systems to collect early meteorological data. Their range, internal space, and robust construction made them ideal candidates for such unconventional roles, and many of these missions laid the groundwork for later specialized aircraft programs. Preservation efforts began relatively early compared to other wartime aircraft. By the 1960s, aviation museums and historical societies began acquiring and restoring surviving Mitchells for static display and airshow demonstration. Several airworthy B-25s were flown in commemorative roles, most famously in the 1970 film Catch-22, which used multiple restored aircraft during filming and helped reignite public interest in the type. Many of the B-25s restored for the film were subsequently acquired by collectors and museums, ensuring their survival into the 21st century. The commemorative role of the B-25 was perhaps best demonstrated during the 1992 50th anniversary of the Doolittle Raid, when 16 restored B-25s were flown to the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. This historic gathering not only honored the men of the raid, but also spotlighted the aircraft's continued cultural significance. Subsequent anniversaries and aviation heritage events have frequently featured B-25s, often flying in formation or performing low-level passes reminiscent of their wartime tactics. Today, dozens of B-25s remain airworthy across North America, Europe, and Australia. Maintained by private foundations, warbird operators, and national museums, these aircraft appear regularly at air shows and commemorative events. They serve as tangible reminders of the aircraft's global service and the people who flew and maintained it. Restored Mitchells often bear the livery of historical squadrons, some replicating Doolittle's Raiders, others honoring Pacific or Mediterranean units. The continued flight of these aircraft is a testament to both their mechanical durability and the enduring public interest in World War II aviation history. The B-25 also left a lasting mark on aircraft design philosophy. Though overshadowed by faster or more glamorous aircraft, the Mitchell quietly influenced post-war thinking on modularity, field modification potential, and mission flexibility. Aircraft such as the A-26 Invader and later Cold War bombers drew on the lessons of the B-25, especially the need to produce platforms capable of adapting to new weapons, tactics, and theaters without requiring complete redesign. In the broader context of World War II aviation, the B-25's legacy is that of a generalist that thrived in a world of specialists. It succeeded not by excelling in any one domain, but by performing acceptably in many, often under adverse conditions. Its ability to grow through wartime innovation, serve across continents, and transition into post-war life made it one of the few medium bombers whose influence endured well beyond the conflict that created it. Today, whether in the pages of history, the tarmac of a museum, or the roaring pass of a vintage airshow display, the B-25 Mitchell remains a living symbol of adaptable strength. It represents a design that responded to chaos with balance, to risk with endurance, and to evolving warfare with functional creativity. In doing so, it secured its place as one of the most respected and widely used combat aircraft of the 20th century, a legacy not born of extraordinary specifications but of consistent, reliable global service. Beyond its well-documented combat missions and standardized variants, the B-25 Mitchell also played a lesser-known but equally important role in a variety of unconventional and experimental applications, many of which remain obscured in the margins of aviation history. These forgotten missions and unseen chapters further reveal the aircraft's versatility and the ingenuity of those who employed it far beyond its original design brief. From clandestine testing to research programs, the B-25 was quietly integrated into initiatives that laid the groundwork for future developments in aviation, intelligence, and technology. One of the most intriguing post-war uses of the B-25 was in the field of electronic warfare and radar countermeasures. As the Cold War began, the U.S. Air Force required airborne platforms to test new jamming equipment and radar detection systems. The B-25's large internal volume and stable flight characteristics made it ideal for this role. Several Mitchells were converted into electronic test beds, equipped with antenna arrays, receivers, and prototype jamming devices. These aircraft were used to simulate enemy bomber raids, test early warning radar networks, and develop countermeasures that would later be deployed on frontline bombers and reconnaissance aircraft during the 1950s and 1960s. In addition to electronic warfare, B-25s were employed in early drone control and guidance testing. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, the U.S. military experimented with converting obsolete aircraft into radio-controlled target drones for live-fire training exercises. B-25s acted as control platforms, flying alongside or behind unmanned aircraft to provide mid-air guidance via line-of-sight radio transmission. These missions were a crucial step in developing remote piloting techniques and contributed directly to the eventual creation of dedicated unmanned aerial vehicles. The B-25 also supported nuclear research during the early stages of atomic weapons development. Though not used for bomb delivery and actual tests, modified Mitchells participated in atmospheric sampling missions during Operation Crossroads and other nuclear test series. Equipped with sensors and reinforced airframes, these aircraft flew through radioactive clouds to gather data on fallout distribution, radiation levels, and atmospheric behavior. These dangerous assignments required skilled crews and underscored the aircraft's durability and value in data collection under extreme conditions. In other classified programs, the B-25 was used to test experimental avionics, gun sights, and bomb delivery systems. It served as a flying lab for optical systems, radar ranging equipment, and even early infrared detection technology. These modifications were often temporary and undocumented, making them difficult to trace in official records. However, post-war interviews with test pilots and engineers confirmed the B-25's presence at remote airfields and proving grounds, where secrecy was paramount and conventional designations were rarely maintained. Occasionally, the aircraft was pressed into diplomatic or covert transport roles. Due to its range, reliability, and civilian-like profile, the B-25 was well-suited for moving personnel and sensitive cargo discreetly in areas of political instability. Some aircraft were assigned to U.S. embassies or CIA front organizations in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, where they supported low-visibility operations. While documentation remains scarce due to classification policies, aircraft logs and anecdotal accounts suggest that B-25s were involved in everything from aerial surveys for infrastructure projects to the quiet extraction of Allied agents and informants. Even in training and instructional roles, the B-25's secondary uses extended far beyond basic flight education. Radar operator training, emergency procedures simulations, and multi-engine failure drills were often conducted using surplus B-25s, particularly in National Guard and Reserve units. Some aircraft were equipped with instrumentation to simulate equipment failures or combat damage, helping train crews in managing in-flight emergencies. These roles, while rarely celebrated, were essential to maintaining readiness during the transition to jet-powered aviation. In several countries, retired B-25s were used in civil aviation schools to teach mechanics and aeronautical engineers. These aircraft were often disassembled and reassembled multiple times by students learning the fundamentals of systems integration, hydraulics, and engine operation. In this educational context, the Mitchell continued to pass on practical knowledge to new generations of aviation professionals, long after it had left combat service. One of the most symbolic forgotten uses of the B-25 was its role in post-war war bond drives and victory tours. Painted in vibrant liveries and adorned with nose art celebrating various theaters of the war, these aircraft toured American cities, landing at municipal airports and drawing crowds. Crews gave talks, displayed bomb loads, and invited civilians to climb aboard. These tours served both as patriotic spectacles and fundraising efforts, helping to finance the final months of the war and post-war recovery efforts. They also bridged the gap between military and civilian communities, transforming the aircraft from a tool of war into an icon of national unity. While many of these unconventional missions remain less visible than combat sorties, they are essential to understanding the full scope of the B-25's utility. The aircraft was not merely a frontline bomber, it was a platform that could be modified, adapted, and reinvented as needed. Whether gathering radioactive samples, jamming radar, or training future engineers, the B-25 Mitchell served in roles few would have imagined at its inception. These hidden contributions underscore the depth of the Mitchell's legacy. It was an aircraft that proved itself not only in the air war of the 1940s, but also in the technological and strategic transformations that followed. As such, it remains a case study in how utility, adaptability, and solid engineering can extend the life and relevance of a combat platform far beyond its original mission. The B-25 Mitchell's legacy is as much shaped by the men who flew, maintained, and supported it as by its technical specifications and combat record. The human experience behind the machine provides vital perspective on how this average bomber became one of the most respected and reliable aircraft of World War II. Pilot and crew testimonials reveal insights into the aircraft's strengths, limitations, and the daily realities of operating in diverse and often harsh combat environments. Pilots frequently praise the B-25 for its forgiving flight characteristics and stable handling, especially when compared to heavier, more complex bombers. The Mitchell's twin-engine configuration offered a measure of safety. Engine failure on one side could often be managed, allowing the crew to return to base. Its tricycle landing gear, relatively uncommon for bombers of the era, improved ground handling and visibility during takeoff and landing. These features combined to give novice and experienced pilots alike a platform that was both manageable and reliable under pressure. Many airmen noted the B-25's spacious cockpit and crew compartments, which housed a crew of 5 to 7, including pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, radio operator, and gunners. This crew configuration fostered teamwork and allowed task specialization, critical for mission success. The aircraft's interior was designed with functionality in mind, allowing crews to operate effectively even during long, arduous missions. Gunners, often stationed in waist, dorsal, and tail positions, had clear fields of fire and effective machine gun installations, which were periodically upgraded in response to combat experience. Combat veterans recounted the durability of the Mitchell. Numerous accounts describe B-25s returning from missions severely damaged by anti-aircraft fire or fighter attacks, with punctured fuel tanks, riddled control surfaces, and wounded crew members. The aircraft's robust construction and redundant systems often allowed it to limp back to friendly territory, preserving both equipment and lives. Maintenance crews on the ground appreciated the straightforward mechanical design, which facilitated rapid repairs even in remote or austere conditions. Pilots also highlighted the versatility of the B-25 in mission execution. Whether flying low-level strafing runs, medium-altitude bombing raids, or maritime interdiction, the Mitchell's adaptability required crews to master diverse tactics. The addition of heavy forward-firing armament in gunship variants demanded new skills in attack profiles and gunnery coordination. In contrast, photo reconnaissance variants required precise navigation and steady flight at altitude. Crews often customized their aircraft in the field, adding armor plating, extra guns, or fuel tanks to meet specific operational demands. The psychological impact of flying the B-25 was significant. For many crews, the aircraft symbolized a tangible advantage, a machine that could survive hits that might destroy other bombers and return them safely. This reliability bolstered morale and fostered a strong emotional attachment. The Mitchell was not considered glamorous compared to faster fighters or heavy bombers, but it earned respect through consistent performance and the shared experience of hardship and survival. Oral histories reveal the challenges crews faced as well. The B-25's defensive armament, while formidable, required constant vigilance against enemy fighters, especially when operating without fighter escort. Navigating tropical weather, mountainous terrain, or the vast expanses of ocean demanded skill and endurance. Long missions with heavy loads taxed both machine and men, and losses, though often survivable, were frequent reminders of the war's dangers. Mechanics and ground personnel contributed an equally important perspective. Their ability to keep B-25s operational under difficult conditions was crucial to maintaining sortie rates. In the Pacific and China-Burma-India theaters, repair crews worked with limited supplies and often improvised solutions to keep damaged aircraft flying. Their efforts not only preserved valuable hardware, but also underscored the importance of the aircraft's accessible design and modular components. Veterans' reflections also highlight the social and cultural aspects of service with the Mitchell. Squadron camaraderie, shared rituals, and unit pride often centered on the aircraft itself, its markings, nose art, and battle stories. These cultural artifacts reinforced identity and cohesion amid the stresses of combat. The B-25 became more than a tool. It became a symbol of collective effort and resilience. In sum, the human dimension of the B-25 Mitchell's history enriches the technical and operational narrative. It illuminates how the aircraft's design translated into real-world effectiveness and endurance, shaped by the men who depended on it. Their experiences attest to the Mitchell's role not just as a weapon of war, but as a vessel of human courage, adaptability, and teamwork. A legacy as vital as any specification or battle record. The history of the B-25 Mitchell, while extensively documented, still holds unresolved questions and areas of debate that invite further scholarly investigation. These ambiguities stem not from a lack of records, but rather from the complexity of wartime production, diverse operational uses, and evolving tactical doctrines that often blurred clear-cut assessments of the aircraft's effectiveness and legacy. One of the most persistent uncertainties concerns the exact performance metrics and combat losses of various B-25 units across different theaters. Unlike larger strategic bombers such as the B-17, which operated under more centralized command and meticulous record-keeping, medium bomber groups often faced fluid operational environments. Missions ranged widely in scale and scope, from high-altitude bombing raids to low-level strafing attacks, making it difficult to produce consistent statistics on sortie success rates, enemy aircraft destroyed, and attrition. Discrepancies in after-action reports, differing criteria for victory claims, and incomplete loss records contribute to ongoing debates among historians. Another area of historical debate involves the decision-making processes behind certain design modifications, especially the introduction of the 75mm cannon in the B-25G and H variants. While the rationale for heavy forward armament is clear, improving anti-shipping and ground attack capabilities, the effectiveness and tactical value of such large-caliber weapons remain contested. Some pilots praise the cannon for its destructive power against ships and fortified targets, while others criticized its slow rate of fire, weight penalty, and operational complexity. Archival correspondence reveals internal disagreements between Air Force leadership, engineers, and frontline crews about the practicality of integrating such weapons into a medium bomber platform. The transfer of B-25 production from North American aviation to other manufacturers such as the Canadian-built Mitchell Mkzn and various licensed foreign productions also raises questions about quality control and design consistency. Although these aircraft broadly conform to the original specifications, minor differences in materials, assembly techniques, and subsystem components sometimes affected performance and maintenance requirements. Assessing the operational impact of these variations, especially in less documented Allied air forces, is challenging due to sparse technical reports and wartime secrecy. Operational doctrine associated with the B-25's evolving roles further complicates historical understanding. The shift from traditional medium-altitude bombing to low-level attack tactics was gradual and often improvised in response to enemy defenses and theater conditions. How much this evolution was driven by the aircraft's inherent design versus external tactical necessity remains a matter of analysis. Additionally, the extent to which the B-25 influenced or was influenced by broader strategic shifts in air power employment is debated. Some historians argue that its flexibility catalyzed innovative tactics, while others see it primarily as an adaptable platform responding to changing doctrines rather than shaping them. The B-25's international service history contains its own gaps. While it is known that many Allied nations operated Mitchells under Lend-Lease, detailed operational records from countries such as China, Brazil, and the Netherlands East Indies are fragmentary or lost. These omissions hinder full appreciation of the aircraft's global impact and obscure its contributions outside major Western theaters. Similarly, the post-war use of B-25s in less documented conflicts, such as colonial uprisings and early Cold War skirmishes, remains partially hidden in classified or untranslated archives. Technological experimentation involving the B-25, including radar-equipped night fighter variants and electronic warfare prototypes, suffers from incomplete documentation. Surviving records hint at ambitious but often unrealized projects that could have extended the aircraft's service life and mission set. The reasons for cancellation or limited deployment, whether technical challenges, shifting priorities, or resource constraints, are not always clear, leaving room for further research into these developmental dead ends. Finally, cultural perceptions of the B-25 have fluctuated over time, influencing how its history is remembered and taught. Initially overshadowed by faster fighters and more glamorous bombers, the Mitchell's reputation as a workhorse sometimes minimized its strategic and tactical importance. Only in recent decades have historians, veterans groups, and aviation enthusiasts sought to rehabilitate its image, emphasizing the aircraft's contributions to diverse combat roles and theaters. This reevaluation continues to shape both academic discourse and public understanding, illustrating how legacy is often as much about narrative framing as factual record. These unanswered questions and interpretive challenges ensure that the B-25 Mitchell remains a dynamic subject for historical inquiry. As new documents emerge, oral histories are recorded, and comparative analyses deepen, the full story of the Mitchell's design, deployment, and influence continues to evolve, mirroring the adaptability that defined the aircraft itself during its storied service. With the conclusion of World War II, the B-25 Mitchell transitioned from a symbol of wartime innovation and versatility to a lasting icon of mid-20th century aviation. Though it no longer served in frontline combat, its influence and presence extended well beyond the cessation of hostilities, permeating post-war military developments, civilian aviation, and cultural memory. In the immediate post-war years, the B-25 remained a key component of the U.S. Air Force's inventory. Converted into trainer variants, it helped prepare a new generation of multi-engine pilots, navigators, and bombardiers. The aircraft's forgiving flight characteristics, robust design, and spacious cockpit made it an effective platform for instructional use. Additionally, modified B-25s served in roles such as target towing, radar calibration, and electronic warfare testing, bridging the gap as air forces transitioned to jet-powered aircraft and advanced avionics systems. Civilian aviation saw an extensive repurposing of surplus B-25s. Their reliability, payload capacity, and range made them well-suited for tasks such as aerial mapping, cargo transport, agricultural spraying, and firefighting. Many air operators worldwide purchased Mitchells, adapting them to varied commercial and governmental functions. Their ruggedness and adaptability ensured operational viability in regions lacking extensive aviation infrastructure, from South America to Africa and Asia. Internationally, the B-25 continued to fly in several air forces for years after the war. Countries such as Brazil, China, the Netherlands, and Indonesia incorporated Mitchells into their post-war air capabilities. In some cases, the aircraft participated in regional conflicts and internal security operations, underscoring its enduring utility in diverse environments. The B-25's widespread export and licensed production cemented its status as a truly global aircraft, transcending its American origins. The Mitchell's cultural legacy grew steadily in the decades following the war. Its participation in iconic missions, particularly the Doolittle Raid, captured public imagination and was commemorated through books, documentaries, and films. Restored B-25s appeared in air shows and historical reenactments, preserving the sound and sight of one of the most prolific medium bombers ever built. Veterans organizations and museums worldwide have dedicated resources to preserving Mitchells as tangible links to the sacrifices and achievements of World War II aircrews. Technologically, the B-25 influenced the design and conceptual approach of later multi-engine aircraft. Its emphasis on modularity, mission flexibility, and durability informed Cold War bomber and transport programs. The aircraft's legacy also lives on in the collective knowledge of maintenance practices, crew coordination, and tactical innovation that emerged from its extensive operational use. Ultimately, the B-25 Mitchell stands as a testament to the effectiveness of balanced design and adaptability. It was neither the fastest nor the most heavily armed bomber, but it excelled through reliability, versatility, and the ability to evolve in response to wartime demands. The average bomber that conquered the world did so not by dominating any single battlefield metric, but by proving indispensable across countless missions, theaters, and roles. Its story is one of pragmatic engineering meeting the unpredictable realities of global conflict, a story of steady, unglamorous excellence that helped secure victory and shape the future of aerial warfare. As such, the B-25 Mitchell remains not just a historical artifact, but a symbol of ingenuity, resilience, and enduring utility in the annals of military aviation.